this place of like unconditional love and this feeling, just a feeling that I'd lost. I'm more carefree about it because I don't take it as seriously because I view it all as a game.
What up, fam? That was Daniel Carcillo. He played 10 years in the NHL with a few different teams. I think he won a few different Stanley Cups with those different teams, had a really successful career. But what ended his career was a series of symptoms that were connected to the amount of concussions he had during his playing days. And he was dealing with a slew of symptoms, slurred speech, headaches, irritability, and what has been one of my biggest fears is early onset dementia from traumatic brain injury. He went on a journey of really trying to work with the best of the best doctors, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, doing his own research and connecting with people, and none of that really worked for him. And then he was called out to a farm where he did his first high-dose psilocybin ceremony. And he says after 2 sessions, 6 days apart, he, for the first time in as long as he can remember, was symptom-free, which is really, really fascinating. He is now an advocate for plant medicine, and he started his own company, Wesana Health, which is a life sciences company that leverages psilocybin-based medication to treat traumatic brain injuries. He's an incredible dude, incredible story, and I know you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Daniel Carcillo. Before we dive in, I want to mention the launch of a new, powerful, and transformative community. Although there are countless communities and networks of high-impact leaders, entrepreneurs, and influential visionaries, what they all lack is the depth of heartfelt connection that can only be achieved through communitas. Communitas refers to an unstructured state in which all members of a community are equal, allowing them to share a common experience facilitated through a rite of passage. This is what allowed me to create such unbreakable bonds with my teammates during my time in the NFL, and why I'm so passionate and excited about facilitating an initiation into a new type of community, one where all of its members are focused on embodying their highest potential and fullest expression, who also have the desire to use their impact and influence to create a more beautiful world right here and right now. If you're interested in learning more or feeling called to apply, check out the link in the show notes. Without further ado, enjoy the show. Daniel, what's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I've been looking forward to jamming out with you for a while. I've heard a little bit about your story from the distance, and I know you've been very public with your healing journey since your NHL career and the challenges you faced. And I'm really looking forward to diving in with you and sharing your experience. I know it's going to have a positive impact on my audience and anybody that's listening to this. But before we drop into that, I'd love to start with kind of the younger years. I know all of us as athletes, there's an origin story, a genesis. And so I'd love to start with kind of when that dream kind of started taking shape in your life of wanting to reach the professional level in the hockey realm.
Yeah. It was a little bit, I think, different than most kids in Canada. Most kids in Canada kind of just come out of the womb playing hockey. And I mean, everything revolved around the rink in our small town. And I was always more drawn to not necessarily like the professional side of it, thinking that I was going to be an NHL player, but I always had this like confusion about life. And, you know, I had parents who were like just somewhat hard at home, but I mean, definitely formed me into the person I am. So I took that kind of anger, frustration, confusion to a sport where at 4 years old, we could drive our shoulder into somebody, you know, and to be honest, it just felt good to be able to release it and leave everything else at home. So I was more drawn to the sport as an emotional release type of like anger management tool, less of like, I'm going to make the NHL.
Really? At 4 years old, you were doing this?
Yeah, 4, 5, 6. I mean, we lived in a small farm town, man. Everybody was like, it's what we used to do, you know, beat each other up. We'd go, you know, have a street hockey game, and there'd always be a fight that breaks out. But then you'd be hugging, and, you know, it's just how guys were. Like we were just, you know, I think bred a little bit different.
Yeah. What a gift it is to have like these physical sports we were able to play to really connect with that that internal anger and rage and have an outlet for it. I feel like most men in our society and culture don't necessarily have that, and it gets bottled up and it comes out in a lot of more unhealthy ways. At least we had an avenue to really channel that into something constructive that kind of took us far in life.
Yeah. And I mean, especially hockey and like the sport you played, you're going to suffer, right? And I feel like now, like I look at my son playing these sports with even these coaches, and they don't teach them how to run lines. They don't teach them like that. If you like one-on-one battle drills, even just in soccer, put a ball out, whoever comes out with it, the other guy does 10 push-ups. There's none of that. And so like in my mind, and I had a talk with this coach, I'm like, if you're not going to teach my son how to, when his body wants to stop, you can enforce a thought pattern that tells him, his mind can tell him to keep going, even just one more line. I'm not asking you to make these 8-year-olds throw up, but you got to test them.
Make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. And like, there's none of that anymore, man. It's so, because everyone's so worried about what these parents are going to say, And so like, then I find myself having to do it in my home where I'm not egregious about it because I'm a softie, but I am going to, if I don't make my kids, like if I don't make it somewhat hard on them in this household, when they get into the real world, like it's dog eat dog. It's still very much kill or be killed. When you get out of elementary school and you get into either business or college or education, like, so I want him and my girls to have that mentality that they can be strong. And so I take them like mountain biking, and we have fun. But like, I'm behind him when he's struggling on a hill to go up, and I'm go, encouraging him. Then he gets up and he looks back at me with these wide eyes. He's like, can't even believe he did it, So yeah, man, I'm grateful that we had, tough sports to teach us about life, for sure.
Yeah, you can always do more than you think. And, I think that's, back to my point earlier is, because I was able to access deeper parts of myself through the sport, and I know what I'm capable of being able to push myself to the limits and then pass some, because I was doing something to accomplish something that was, with a team, and doing something that was greater than just something for myself. Being of service to some greater goal allowed me to push myself in those ways. And I notice, as a man, when I walk into a room, I don't have anything to prove because I know what I'm capable of. I know what I've done. I know who I am because I've pushed myself to places that most people, like the average human, just hasn't done. I think that goes a long way in my presence in a room and my ability to hold myself and not have to prove. And it creates this like healthy masculine energy rather than trying to like prove myself in a room because I don't really know what I'm at. I have to like kind of pretend.
You got a jockey, I think they call that the small man syndrome. You wouldn't believe how many people the last 4 years of my life that I've met like that just have this huge ego and feel a need to enforce it on people that are either working for them or in lesser positions than them. And if push came to shove, if somebody stood up to them, then they crumble. So to your point, I think it's just a knowledge of knowing and being comfortable that, I don't need to fight, but if it came to that, I'll fucking destroy you.
Yeah, I know what I'm capable of.
It's not a hand-to-hand combat thing. It's also like an emotional thing. And, in business, if you don't, if things don't go your way or you don't like somebody, you don't turn around and then get them right away. It's usually a couple of years later, a couple of months later, where this person or people will look back and say, "Oh shoot, that was him." So yeah, it's I like what I'm doing now because that skill set allows me to, number one, outwork people, and that never changes in anything. Right. So, and that's also why, like, I want my boy and I want my girls from a young age to know that, it's less about skill. I wasn't like that skilled. There were a lot of other kids and I
wasn't the biggest, wasn't the strongest.
No, I just worked harder than you in everything, in soccer, in school, in sport, and you can't outwork me.
Going back to those formidable years when you were younger, you talked about some challenges you had at home and then having hockey as an avenue to release aggression. Do you mind speaking a little bit to that? What were some of the challenges that you faced growing up in that family dynamic, especially now that you have a family of your own?
Yeah. Some stuff that's like tricky that I've reconciled and that my parents know, right? It's like you do what you know, and you do what you've experienced in the past because you think that is how you have to raise your son or daughter. And one thing was, I grew up in a household with two brothers. I was the middle. I was always the biggest. So I had my two brothers kind of ganging up on me, but like we would hurt each other, like we would fight. And my mom was like an amazing woman, like raised us not on her own because my dad contributed by going to work and showing his love that way. That's how men used to do it. And I realize that now. I didn't realize it back then. But whenever we'd fight, like, it was old school mentality. Like you get hit by your parents. And I was just really sensitive, and I still am, and that'll never change. And I'm an empath, so like I feel things more, and it really just hurt me, And now I've been able to look at it now because when I see my son or my daughters fighting, my initial reaction is to lose it and yell. And it's from a place of me being a parent. I don't want to see one of my kids, hurting one of my other children because I love them both so much. So then I'm like, I had this realization, I don't know, probably 4 years ago or 5 years ago. I was like, oh shoot, that's why, they would get so mad. And so that was a little bit, it was just tough. So you grow up in these types of like dynamics, and then, like we said before, just thank God that we had outlets. And then, when you get older, then you can communicate these things, which I have, and then we can forgive and then move on because they were doing the best that they could with the knowledge that they have. And then it's such a blessing because I was able to stop that cycle, and I don't hit my kids. But like I said before, I do put them in situations that make them uncomfortable and that they have to, like when they fall, when they were younger, I wouldn't pick them up. Just get up.
Yeah. I do the same thing. It's so funny at the park when like a kid falls and like everybody runs and their nervous system, like the parents' nervous systems are all activated, which is actually the kids can feel that. And so they like, even if though they might not be very hurt, if a parent's coming over fully activated, being like, oh my God, are you okay? And they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm okay. Like my son, I give him space. I let him feel into it. And if he's like really bawling and crying, I go comfort him. But if he falls and he's kind of like checking it out, looking around like, am I okay? I like allow him to get up and take care of himself. I think that's massive.
You're good, man. Like just dust it off. No broken bones. It's like, are you hurt or are you injured? That type of mentality, right? Because you can play hurt. If you're injured, that means you have a broken bone or you have a pulled muscle, and you probably, of course, then it's time to get the treatment or comfort the kid or, but yeah, like just little things like that, try to, and, like my mother-in-law or like so other people will be like, man, you're a meanie or, it's like, no, I'm not being mean. I think it's like rude to not do it that way because again, it's a disservice to these children to think that when they get older, I'm always going to be there to pick them up. I'm not, right? And I'll help them any way I can. But you need to learn how to help yourself in this world. I feel like with these phones and the path that we're going down as a society, it's getting dangerous. And, you're always going to encounter killers, right? Not in the sense that they're going to take your life, but they're going to take food from your table and business any way that they can. in school. And it's just a really competitive environment when you get out of the house. It's never, ever going to change because we're animals, So, I would be doing a disservice to my kids, whether they're girls, boys, if I didn't parent them that way.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I've been on this deeper healing journey, which I know you have as well, and having a deeper understanding of kind of these emotional experiences, and being a parent now, having deeper compassion for our parents and the way they raise us, and always doing the best they can. And I feel the same way. But there's something that happens when we were kids that we just maybe didn't receive the love or the validation or the connection that we desired in those kind of states of consciousness when we were younger. And I know you've been on this journey, being able to reflect back, and you said, those fights with your brother and the way your parents kind of raised you made you feel a certain way. Have you connected with those emotions? Like, what emotions were you feeling as a young kid that you didn't really, maybe couldn't make sense of then, but maybe have been able to process and reconcile now?
Just normal emotions, just, frustration, anger, not being heard, being misunderstood, not always being included. I was always like a smart kid in school. So that kind of alienated me from, certain crowds that I thought I wanted to be in.
Not cool to be smart.
I always played like double A. And in Canada, if you're not playing triple A, you're not playing at the best minor hockey league levels. So, you get picked on there. And I was just, it was always a little bit more difficult, and I was like, I was the kid that was showing up to the party first, right? Like the only boy there. It's like, I was a dork, and I still am. There's still, so it was like, it was difficult to fit in at times, and then it's funny how it changed because we were from a small town, and when we went to high school, I remember this like it was yesterday, the first day of school. It was a big like lobby area, and you had the Aurora kids over here, and you had the King City kids over here, and the Newmarket kids over here, and you had all these different groups. And for whatever reason, like our guys, we became like, the alphas, and we were good at sport. We grew into our looks, but then we all like really just stuck together, And then I was drafted to the NHL when I was in grade 11. Or
really?
We get drafted early. So that like kind of like that dynamic flip flopped within 2 or 3 years. It was like a really fast change for me.
And that's just because you're growing into your body and your athletic ability, and you started really elevating your game as far as a hockey player goes, and started getting this attention from the NHL. Do they draft you in 11th grade just to kind of own your rights? And then do they put you into developmental leagues, or do you go, like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's much different than the NFL. We don't go to college as a developmental league. We are in high school and we go to what's called the Canadian Hockey League. So at 16, you're playing against 16 to 21-year-olds. And if you're in high school, you go to high school. If you're in college, you go to college. If you're older and you're not doing college, you just go to the rink early. But yeah, you're drafted 17, turning 18. If you're going to make it, and other kids have, but if you're really going to make it, you're getting scouted at that age. And in high school, you're drafted, and then I turned pro as soon as I graduated. I went to the minor leagues, which is the American Hockey League, the AHL. So if you sign a contract, you sign a 2-way contract. And you make about, I think I was making $55,000 in the AHL, as opposed to the lowest level being, I think at that time was around like $300,000.
It's like when I was playing the practice squad, made maybe $80,000 on the same team. There's 10 practice squad guys, and then an inactive player who's on the active roster who's literally not dressed on the sideline, same kind of weekly like schedule and amount of work they put in, but one of them's making $500,000, one of them's making $80,000. It's different, the dynamic there. So let's go fast forward a little bit into your professional career. Talk a little bit about what it was like to make it in the pros, start making a name for yourself, and speak to maybe the top of the mountain experience, the pinnacle experience of your NHL career, some of the memories that you have.
Yeah. Pro was something else. It was different. When I first started in the NHL, I was playing on a team with like either kids that were too young to go out and have fun, or guys that were older at the end of their career in Arizona. Wayne Gretzky was my coach, which was funny. So he had his old boys club all around. I brought my brothers down just because I wanted to hang with people I knew. The first 5 years, it was just all about, making a name for myself, fighting, standing up for myself, teammates, scoring goals. I was kind of like a bit of a new breed that could do it all. But I started knocking a lot of guys out and making a name for myself as a fighter.
That's a specific role in hockey, right? Like, I'm not familiar. There's guys that your role is like you're the bruiser. What do they call that?
Yeah, enforcer. But there's like
Enforcer.
Heavyweights that can't really play. That'll play 4 minutes a game. Then there's
They just come in to start riling shit up.
Yeah. Well, they'll just when I was in the game, some games would just start with a fight for no reason whatsoever. I was always kind of, but it was always weird to me. Like, didn't make any sense. The only time I would ever fight somebody is if either they did something to someone on my team or I did something to someone on their team with a huge hit or something. And, you're a man, you stand up, there's honor in the game, and okay, I'll fight you, I started winning pretty much all of my fights. And, and then you kind of get pigeonholed. But I could always play on the first or second line, not every single game, but for some shifts, so the first 5 years, it was like I was doing a lot of things off the ice that I probably, shouldn't have done. I had a ton of injuries because I was running hard, but I was playing really good hockey. And at 25, actually,
what kind of stuff were you doing off the field?
Just partying, just living.
Any specific experiences to share? And we don't have to go too deep into I know how it is, dude. I party too.
Yeah, man, I was just running, I was I was a 20-year-old kid with, getting paid way too much money to play a game. And we were just having fun.
I always heard those NHL players love to drink.
Yeah. A lot of booze. There were drugs. There was a lot of stuff. Yeah. It really mimics hockey's very up, down. It's it's a scissor ride of a roller coaster, and you're in pain pretty much the first day of training camp. Your body starts breaking down. And you manage that differently, right? And back then, this is 2004, 2005, we weren't talking about mental health. We weren't talking about concussions. We weren't talking about ashwagandha and rhodiola and mushrooms and CBD for inflammation. No, man, we were getting pumped full of cordyceps or cortisol, Toradol, painkillers, just all the really bad stuff.
It was so normal back then too. I remember they used to have a bowl of painkillers just in the training room. You didn't
even need a prescription. The trainer would walk up and down. What do you need? I remember one guy going, I need 5 Ambien and a bunch of muscle relaxers. And he's like, sure, here you go. And they would give it to you in a white envelope, And this guy, it's this Russian kid, I won't say his name, but then he'd be calling around the rooms all messed up, looking for more Ambien, when clearly the guy had a problem, but it just didn't matter back then. And then things started to happen. Guys started to die, and things started to come to light. So that kind of slowed down towards the end of my career for sure. But
think people started to die, like current players, from drug overdose.
Yeah, just guys.
Anybody you knew?
Yeah. Well, when I was still playing, Steve Monador, Wade Bila, a bunch of guys that were fighters, bruisers, and not necessarily when they were in their career, but towards the end, if you manage pain a certain way for 10 years, it's not like you're just going to stop when you get out of the sport, because it actually feels even worse when you're out of the sport because you're not moving, but no, there's a lot of guys, man. There's a lot of guys that ended up, finding stage 4 CTE, which is a neurodegenerative disease, which you guys know very well and went through. I went through that at, 30. That's why I retired with 7 concussions.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about
Yeah.
your decision to retire towards the end of your career and what that process was like. Was it something that was all of a sudden and you were forced out because of this? Was it something that you just decided because you were trying to take better care of yourself?
I saw you guys go through that lawsuit, and I was like, all right, I definitely have those symptoms. And then I was just my thing was in hockey. Again, I didn't do it for the glory or for anything like that. I did it. I mean, I did it to make money, I wanted to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time.
Did you love the game at all?
Yeah, well, of course, I loved the game, but I hated these institutions that were like telling you what you could say, and then you got to wear this, and you had to act a certain way, and
yeah, fucking bullshit. The business side of it, like, really took the love of the game away from me, man. It's really challenging.
What happened was, like, when I was 25, I had a ton of injuries. Then these doctors, prescribed me 90, 30 milligram hydrocodones after. So I got like deep into this addiction to these painkillers. And then I finally asked for help, and I went to a rehab, and that was the first time. So this is when I was 25, that I started to learn about, I started learning like meditation and breath work and yoga. And
how did you learn those? Where did those resources come from? Was it from the rehab facility? Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing facility. Like, saved my life, completely changed my life, extended my career by 5 years.
Talk about that experience specifically, like how the emotional, mental paradigm shifted in that experience of being in rehab. Like, what came up for you, and what was that shift like?
So at 21, I got a DUI in Arizona. I did 90 days in jail. And then we have a substance abuse program, and I was immediately entered into that. So I was in that my whole career.
90 days in jail while you were playing? You were 90 days straight in jail? What did your team do? Were they just like, fuck, like, we'll see you when you get out?
So, Wayne was my coach, so we got special treatment. The sheriff let me serve it after the year was over. So I just,
just during the season?
Served my time. No, it was it was during training camp.
So you were like going to go to jail for 90 days, miss the entire season. Well, like, let's let you play the season, and then you can come to jail for the off season.
Come in after, yeah.
Damn.
Always special treatment,
Well, we still had to go to jail. Fuck, it wasn't that special. I mean, I guess it's like, hey, just come serve your time later.
Yeah. So that introduced me to the substance abuse program. So then these doctors were like, I was always I don't have the phenomenon of craving. I did the whole AA thing. I stayed sober for 2 years, but I was like, hey man, I don't wake up like craving alcohol. There's alcohol in my house. I don't have to drink it till I pass out, which is like the definition, and then you go buy more when you have money. That's the definition of this phenomenon of craving. I didn't have it. I had it with opiates though. I definitely, because it numbed out the things that I was feeling, not only the pain, but then I had this spiritual thing going on from a young age that I just didn't know. I didn't quite look at, because, emotionally, I didn't develop. I was still playing a freaking game, man. I've been playing this hockey game for, and it's just all kind of like it's like a big joke, you just wake up, exactly what to do. I know how to keep my body in shape. And, I did like the minimum to just get by. And, but thank God for that, because that saved my life. Because after 2 surgeries back to back, when I was 25, I got into these opiates. In 3 months, man, I was done. And I had to ask for help. And then I went to this place called the Canyon, and it's in Malibu, the top of the hill. It actually got burnt down during that fire.
Dang. Yeah.
I was like, and I went there to we were in Malibu for something else, and we were just filming. And I'm like, oh man, I want to go see this. The Dalai Lama visited it, blessed it. It was like an amazing property down in this canyon. And I just had the most amazing experience for 90 days. I got introduced to a bunch of people that were amazing, like, how was it? Like amazing addicts, and But then we all still kept in touch, especially with one of my good friends in Chicago, Brad, really successful lawyer. And we're still really good friends. And it just taught me, in the morning we would do a mindfulness act where we'd like scan our whole body and breathe into the parts that felt off. And, luckily when I went there, it was kind of on my own accord. I didn't have to do any meds or get off of any, I kind of weaned off by myself. And it's like, oh man, like talking about what's actually going on can release this stress. The breath work can help, the yoga can help, the eating better, because I didn't, if it wasn't broken, don't fix it, What
were some of the biggest shifts you made eating from like before till now?
Like just a lot of like fruit,
less bullshit, like processed foods and shit like that. Probably didn't take as much.
But, dude, I would like when I was in Arizona, just after In-N-Out, you burn 3,000 calories, you could crush anything, right? So like just 2 burgers from In-N-Out and,
So just having an awareness of that. Before you just didn't even have awareness how it affected your body, which is a big thing. I mean, I ate like, it's crazy. I was a professional athlete and the shit I ate, and I didn't really start taking care of my body till like towards the end of my career. And once I started eating healthy, I actually started losing weight. And as an offensive lineman, being close to 300 pounds my whole career, they're like, you need to gain weight. So I actually went back to starting eating like shit to keep that weight on. And that's when I really noticed the like how it impacted my energy levels, feeling more lethargic, not being able to like just have as much vibrancy in my body.
The body, the eating, but then talk about like the spirituality stuff. Because now you're talking about your feelings, you're bringing up these emotions. I reconciled everything with my parents. I brought my brothers down there. It was amazing. We all sat in the room. We were like the criers, right?
Wow.
And we just all told each other everything that, we felt. And we moved on from that day. But spiritually, it fucked me up because then I started going out and I'm like, I'm really good at what I do. I know how to hurt people on the ice. And I started thinking about what I was doing. And then when you think in a sport that fast, it's bad. You're just supposed to react, right? There's no, oh, should I? Too late. Your jaw's broken. So that messed me up for sure. And then I started to change the way I was as a player. But it was really good. Like the last 5 years of my career, man, I was a good teammate, good person, good friend, good family member. I went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times with 3 different teams in 5 years when I started living the right way. So everything changed for me. And, the concussions ended my career, but, and then there was some dark periods. There was another like dark 5 years, in 2015 on.
Before we get into that, I want to talk about, you went to this rehab and you had this spiritual experience, developed all these tools, in the culture of professional athletes, and I'm sure in the hockey environment, talking about drinking, opioids, pain management in these like unhealthy ways. How did you integrate all these tools into who you were, into this culture? I mean, were you viewed as kind of this hippie weirdo, or did you share this with your teammates? How did you integrate it into what you're doing?
Because, dude, you'll never see me wear mallet beads. You'll never see me in a white shawl. I'm a very spiritual person, but you wouldn't be able to tell, because I'm the type of guy in this world where everyone's talking about everything that they do and showing you. And like, I'm not.
The Instagram shamans.
Nah, I'm just like, dude, I have what I have. I do like telling my story because I know that it helps a lot of people, because I know that there's a lot of people out there, especially with concussion, that suffer like badly. Their families suffer, their caregivers. So I do like talking about what has helped me, and then maybe it could help them. But I'm not showy about it for sure.
So, but it was helping you with your performance on the field. You were meditating regularly. Did you lose some of that connection when you started playing and kind of being around a different environment, or were you able to hold those practices, those tools, and obviously it helped?
Yeah, no, I'd go to the bar with the guys. So when I got traded to Chicago, when I found this recovery and then I came back, there was a guy by the name of Steve Monador that was on the team that was 7 years sober. And like, you would never be able to tell. Good looking guy, tattoos everywhere, talked to every girl at the bar, like just like oozed confidence. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And in the rooms when you're getting better, they always tell you, like, if you're attracted to somebody, go up and talk to them and figure out how they're doing it. So then maybe you could learn how to implement some of that in your life. And me and him we went to like pretty much every night, every lunch, every dinner. We would be talking about spirituality. We would be meditating in hyperbaric chambers. We would be, burning incense and say, we would be going to meetings. We'd be going to drum sessions. Like we were in it. And it was funny because when I got to Chicago as a Blackhawk, Patrick Kane, I remember, like, came up to me. He's like, "Oh man," he's like, "Where are we going tonight?" And I'm like, "No, man.
What are we gonna get into?"
I don't drink anymore. He's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, but like, I'll go with you. I don't care. I'll chill out and have a ball."
Yeah, there's no judgment of like, I don't drink anymore. No. You drink, so I'm not hanging out with you. It's just a lifestyle choice, and there's an energy to that when you're around people that choose that, but they still like to have fun, can go party and like enjoy themselves. It's just that choice of like, I just don't do that.
Yeah. And they never made it weird. It was like, I'll never forget. Like Nicholas Jarmelson was always like, he'd come up to me, he'd be like, "Man," he's like, "I love that you're here sober. Like, how are you? How are you doing it?" But he would always kind of look out for me too. Because it doesn't come without its problems. Because usually, if you're not really strong-willed, minded, etc., where there's smoke, there's fire. Usually, you don't like go by the fire if you don't want to get burnt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it was fine. It was fine, and I was always going to new restaurants. Me and Steve were always checking out new stuff, and everybody would be coming up to us because like Kaner, Taves, these guys, Seabrook, Keith, Jarmelson, these guys that played 20, 25 minutes a night, 30 minutes a night. I was playing 4 or 5. They would be asking me like, "Where do we go? Who's in town? What artist is in town? Is there a new restaurant that we can pop into?" And like, those are the types of things I talked about. I didn't talk about like, "Where are we shooting on this goalie tonight? Oh, look, the sheet says low blocker. That's where he's weak." I was like, "No, man, I played the game off of emotion and just tried to have fun." I made the playlist for the boys. The last 5 years was a lot of fun. But it was also like really painful because, Steve ended up passing away. And it was, we talked about before why I decided to stop. I saw the same symptoms in me that I saw in Steve that I was reading about with your guys' lawsuit. And I ended up getting my 6th and 7th concussion in my last 2 years. And I just had to, my then girlfriend became my wife after I retired, was pregnant. All I ever wanted to do was be a dad. And so I started to like weigh all of these things. And I just said, I won 2 cups. I was like, well, what else is there for me to do? So I made a decision to step away. But I did it very publicly. One thing that we talked about earlier is like making sure our kids suffer, but also I want somebody to hold my kids accountable if they're doing anything wrong, And so like, I know that we were lied to. And so I want to expose that. And I want everybody else to know that we didn't have this information, but the league that we were playing with and the doctors, they did. And Steve had fucking 19 concussions, man.
Wow.
Diagnosed, documented concussions. Okay.
And what happened to Steve? Was it the concussions that led to something, or did he?
Yeah, it was all of it, right? It was the trying to manage the mild dementia that he was experiencing at 34, the mild dementia that I was experiencing at 30 when I stepped away. Slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, weight loss, short-term, long-term memory loss, having 17 keys for one deadbolt, like these types of things. After he passed, I went to his house. These things that break your heart. And he was searching. He was going to do ayahuasca. He was trying to find healing, trying to find things that flush out this neuroinflammation, this damage, like reconnect our brain, right? These brain hemispheres. And so, yeah, when he passed, I kind of, I did a video at the Players Tribune during the Stanley Cup Finals, because nobody really watches hockey. The only time it's really covered is when you're in the finals. And I just did a call to arms with the Players Tribune and said that we need to get better. Steve was out there on his own, suffering. Nobody was helping him. He was very involved with the alumni, but the alumni was nowhere to be found. The league was nowhere to be found. So like, who's helping after we're done? And if it's nobody, great, but don't moonlight and say the NHL is a family and all this stuff when, you know, you had this information, you didn't give it to us so that we could assess, and make the right decision. We probably all would have still signed, but who cares? Like, it's our decision. And you didn't give us that information. And then he was gone and, nobody could help him. And then he died, in his house, like alone, So I got mad and then I started, and I still do this just on a lesser level. But for the first 5 years, man, I would educate everybody on concussion, education, awareness, how the league had this information. There's a really great investigational journalist that was helping just expose all this stuff. And then it's like, well, okay, so what are we going to do to make it better? That's kind of the shift that happened when I found mushrooms, because I became really suicidal. And I didn't know what else to do because I'd spent probably in the first 5 years after I retired about $500,000. I had means. I could get the best treatment in the world. And I was a very strong advocate and just nothing was doing it, man. Nothing was reactivating my brain. And you talk about like mind, body. We treat mind, we treat the body. Nobody treats the spirit, and I had to do that. And so thank God the mushrooms found me. And, I went through all this stuff for a really good reason.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into that. I think when a lot of the CTE stuff was coming out, it was towards the middle of my career, and it really created this underlying fear and anxiety that developed of.
But you ignored it, right? Because I
ignored it. I kept playing.
Because you're still in it.
Yeah, I'm still in it. And it started making me think about, what happens when you start going crazy, because it's an awareness thing. It's not like, oh, I broke my arm and it's very clear that this is the thing that's wrong. It's a slow, gradual deterioration of your level of awareness, your consciousness, the lens in which you actually view reality. And it's actually what got me into meditation and reading books. I really wanted to, how can I be proactive with my brain health? Learning about nutrition, high inflammatory foods, learning about how to create new neuroplasticity in the brain, neurogenesis, new experiences, novel experiences. And then I started seeing the research around mushrooms and the fMRI scans and just the neural networks that they create. And I said, wow, that's what started getting me interested in this and traveling and all this stuff. And so I'm really grateful for it leading me down that path. And then it ended up leading into a deeper connection with spirituality and the nature of what is and creation and consciousness. But it really started out from really this taking care of my brain because there's this underlying fear that I was living with. So I'm interested, when you started having these symptoms, what was that actual experience like? Was it something that you were aware of, a shift, or was it a subtle kind of undertone of like something's off? Was it a reflection from your closest relationship saying like, hey, you're acting different, or you're a little bit more kind of a shorter fuse with your anger? Like what's going on? How did you recognize that these symptoms were showing up when there's such a subtle thing that's happening kind of under the surface of your entire experience of life?
So, I mean, dude, I was waking up, a good day would be, 5 symptoms, a bad day is 15 or 20, so.
And what are these symptoms you say? Like
slurred speech, headache, head pressure, migraines, insomnia, vision issues, equilibrium issues, balance issues, memory issues, impulse issues, a lot of sleep issues.
How was your emotional feeling with having experienced that? Was it just like, fuck, is it
it's
worth living?
Not in the beginning, right? It's like, well, fuck, I'll figure it out because I always do. So now let's take the money that I have, right, with the connections that I have, and let's try to get better. So first 2 years was always concussion clinics, CT brain banks, talking to the best of the best and paying cash because unfortunately, these multidisciplinary approaches to treating the brain don't get covered by insurance. And if they do, these people are not too enthralled with, fighting insurance companies to get reimbursement for like a cognitive test, right? An EEG. But what I do is listen. I listen intently to every word that comes out of an individual's mouth. And so I did that, and I kept hearing a common theme, and you don't need to be a doctor to know how to kind of treat yourself and what makes you feel good and bad. So I started hearing, well, first of all, it started with diagnostics, a lot of diagnostics. So they would test like your earlobe fluid, which is your vestibular system, your ocular, which the eye-brain axis is a very strong indication of your brain health. So if you see people, their eyes are off, or it's the first thing I look at as a survivor. Then they test you cognitively. So on an iPad, as well as an EEG. EEG measures the electrical waves between your 6 brain hemispheres. We all have 6. Everybody thinks the concussion's on the whole brain. It's not. It's on one area that's affecting a couple others. And so then they identify language lives in a specific part of our brain, the creativity, the focus, all of these things. So they're testing that on the iPad with the EEG, with the vestibular testing, the ocular testing, and then your autonomic testing. So your heart rate going from sitting to standing, does it race, these types of things. And then they take all of that information and they make you a personalized program accordingly. And the one thing they say is we're going to wake up the brain hemisphere. For me, it was my lower right cortex that's damaged, right? I'm like, okay, great. What do I have to do? So I would spend 5 days, like intensive programs, paying $1,500 a day. And you would feel good. Anybody doing something that intently for 5 days, you're going to feel better, but then it would drop off with your at-home exercises. And then, they never talked about like hormone testing or supplementation or, diet or, that was kind of like the first foray into just understanding how I could self-diagnose myself. So I did that for a while. I didn't get better. And I was like tired of paying money. I was tired of these people telling me the same thing. And so then I moved on to hyperbaric chambers, more holistic things, float tanks or self-deprivation tanks, moxa acupuncture with a specific girl in LA that does like this brain health routine that can flush inflammation. Yoga, focusing on diet, hormone testing. So the pituitary gland sits in a very rigid part of our skull and gets affected. And like, it made a lot of sense for me to be like, well, shoot, like, why don't these clinics have this testing? Like, why can't they take what's happening in my body's producing and then also do the ocular, the vestibular? Like, it feels like these things should be married. And so I went down that path for 2 or 3 years. And yeah, man, I just I couldn't get over the hump. Like, I would feel good for a month or two.
It must have been frustrating to invest all this money, doing all these things, all these experts, and you're still feeling like shit.
And I was also really angry. I was like still going at the NHL on Twitter, Instagram. So I was living in this fucking bubble of just frustration. And then eventually, it started to the foundation started to crack where I was like, it was difficult on my wife because I was sick and I was being very selfish in that. And I still believe you have to be as an individual. I have to selfishly take care of myself or else I'm not going to be able to be present with my kids. I'm not going to be able to be present with you. I didn't have a job. I wasn't, doing anything. So then, you're going to parties, you're around people that you could tell don't want to be around you because you're unpredictable. And, Dan's just a dick. And I, there were parts of me that I was, and you have to take accountability for that. But it was like from a place of just like, I didn't want to be around anybody. I was in so much pain. I just wanted to kind of be alone. And I'm very comfortable being alone, right? Like, being alone isn't lonely to me at all. It's like sometimes when I'm the happiest. And so I got to a point where I was like, man, I can't let my kids see me like this and think this is a normal way to act and live. So I started to, number one cause of death is suicide after a TBI or traumatic brain injury. And I started to make plans to unburden my family. It wasn't a selfish thing. I was just like kind of done. I was like, tried everything.
What kind of plans did you plan out in your mind? What did that look like?
So the first couple like images or weeks was like, there was these beams in my house that, but I couldn't, and I've talked about this before. I couldn't reconcile people coming home to like see that. So then I started to, just when I was like driving in my truck at that time, just going fast, no belt, putting it into a tree, just.
And were those spontaneous thoughts while you were driving, or was this something that you're like,
yeah, they were
always an undercurrent of your planning?
Well, they started out as spontaneous, and then it started out as like being a plan, and then one day, like eventually execute it,
How close did you get to executing?
I was close. The only thing that kept me from I just thought in my head that it was, even though I can reconcile that it wasn't like a selfish act, it was I'm an honorable, and not to say that people who have done that aren't honorable. I just couldn't get there. I couldn't, I just couldn't get there. I don't know why. There was some type of block where there was always hope that I would figure this fucking thing out. Right.
Do you think that's what happens with most people in that situation, is they lose hope? Because there is a natural, like it takes a lot of, like one perspective of committing suicide is it takes a lot of courage to actually go through with it. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, was that the hope? Is that what people let go of when they finally do it? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, I thought I tried everything, right? From like a perspective of getting better. And I wasn't going to live the rest of my life in that type of pain. And it progressively just kept getting worse, as dementia does. There was definitely dealing with mild dementia. And so, I just, I decided to accept an invitation from a former teammate to go to a farm. And he knew, like he could tell on Instagram and Twitter, he's like, dude, it's like, you're in it. Or do you want to come and just check this place out? And, this guy grows all his own medicine. And I was like, sure, I'm not doing anything. I've always liked the idea of farming, and I always worked on farms growing up and connect back with nature. And maybe it'll take my mind off all this stuff that I'm going through. And so I accepted this invitation to Colorado, where psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, happened to be a decriminalized thing. So I couldn't get arrested. And so I showed up at this house, and, I thought we were going to learn about planting CBD and these genetics and diet and functional mushrooms. And they actually said, we want to do something for you. And I was like, all right, we can tell you're hurting. And I'm like, yeah, no, I am for sure. And so we want to do a ceremony for you, a psilocybin ceremony. I said, okay. I'm like, you guys should have told me before. Like I would have grabbed the beer and I would have, grabbed the smokes, because usually that's how you do it recreationally, or how I knew how to do it anyway. And they're like, no, we're gonna go up to 5 grams, and you're not gonna be able to turn it off, and you're gonna probably purge some demons and just see head on like why you're feeling the way you are, why you're suicidal.
And you had no experience of this beforehand, of like
at this level. No, definitely not. And I told them all before, right? You're not only preparing yourself, but you're also preparing the person or the people that are going to be around you when you're doing something like this. And so I told them, I was like, yeah, man, I was very, very suicidal, and for these reasons. And they said, all right, we think we can help. I said, all right. So we did it. We dosed at night. We fasted for like 4 or 5 hours, and it was the most difficult 3 hours of my life for sure.
Do you mind sharing some of the things? Like, what was that actual experience like? What came up for you? What did you experience? What did you witness? Was it visual? Was it like deep somatic releasing? Was there some grieving, energy release? You talk about, purging. You've done some deeper work with some plant medicines now, and purging is a big part of it. And for those of you that haven't done, purging is just a release of energy. It can show up in throwing, like physically throwing up, or crying, yawning, laughing, like somatic shaking. What was that first 5-gram experience like for you?
So your hamstrings, like where it kind of connects your pelvis. I would always roll that out, like to make sure I
Those
was
tight muscles you always had to work in. Yeah.
So we lemon teched it. So we did a faster release. So what it does, it breaks down psilocybin into the active ingredient that when it's in your belly that binds to the 5-HT2A serotonin receptors. So it breaks it from psilocybin to psilocybin. So essentially you're taking like, boom, you're kind of in it in the first 5 or 10 minutes. And I just wasn't prepared. But everybody's, around me having a good time. We're all talking, and my legs are just, and I can tell. I'm like, oh man, this isn't going to be fun. And then I started to not purge, but kind of dry heave, like. But that's why you fast, so you're not having somebody like throw up all the mushrooms and everything. And then I would get up and I would go outside. And was kind of yelling, like, kind of things like, what is this? And just, I got caught on this farm that it was my first time there. I'd only been there for like 4 or 5 hours with people. I only knew one person. And then I felt, so I kept doing this loop, in the house, outside of the house, in the house, dry heaving when I was outside of the house, screaming. And then anytime that my guide, put his hand on me, it's like, just felt so good, and he's like, hey man, just this is what's supposed to happen. Right. And so then I, do that loop again. And then eventually it was like good 2.5 hours. I thought I was kind of done. I was just so taxed energy wise. And then, so we all laid down, and then we put on 432 hertz music, and we all kind of laid there. And then it was like, it was beautiful when I started to like not fight. But this medicine has the ability to kind of exasperate what's at the forefront of your mind. So show you what's wrong, then you can move past it after the ceremony if you integrate it into your life. And as we were lying there, my friend used to have this long curly hair when we used to play together. And I grew up Catholic, so I was an altar boy, very deep in like the church. So he came to me as like this reincarnation of God when I was feeling really good. And he goes, hey man, like, thank you for coming. We want you on this team. I'm like, what? I remember saying, like, me, why me? Like, I'm such a fucking loser. Why me now? And I've always that's a common theme in my life. I've always been very, very hard on myself. And he's like, no, man. It's like, you're amazing. We love you. You have a high energy. We want to activate you. We want you a part of this. And I was like, and even just hearing those words, I just kind of laid down and listened to the music and just let it take me wherever it needed to.
And where would you say it took you?
This place of like unconditional love and this feeling, just a feeling that I'd lost, that I think we all, could lose at points in our life because, we're worried about things we really shouldn't be worried about. Even though, I still participate in those things. It's less, I'm more carefree about it because I don't take it as seriously because I view it all as a game, So yeah, it was amazing. I fell asleep 3 hours, which is it's not that normal. Like usually it's like 4, 5, 6 hour trip. But because it was so intense, and then I woke up the next day and I just describe it as feeling the way I should. So I describe it as, we didn't really get into it, but there were a lot of stuff that happened like when I was a minor and junior. And I describe it as like how I felt before I left for junior hockey, before I really started taking a lot of really big hits. And I just felt good. I felt like I had some energy.
So even further back than you can remember, because it was just a slow, you started taking big hits. So it's just like, this is my normal state of being
Yeah,
now.
it's my baseline.
Baseline. So you have
But
this,
I'm also like killing it, right? So it's like, it can't be that bad. I'm one of 700 people playing
so
in the
talk about that
NHL.
relief, that relief you felt instantly when you woke up. Like, was it just like, holy cow, I haven't felt this good in as long as I can remember?
Dude, I was still confused. Like I was like,
What the fuck just
what
happened?
was that?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And then we just talked. We stayed on the farm for like a good week. I ended up going to another like weekend retreat that had a stack ceremony of 7 grams of psilocybin, an IM shot of ketamine in the afternoon. Then we finished on 5-MeO DMT. So that was another whole amazing type of experience.
How much further longer after this first experience was that one?
6 days.
6 days. So, I mean, those are some deeper, powerful medicines that I'm sure it was your first time experiencing those. How was that experience?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was unbelievable. A lot more enjoyable than the work I'd done previously, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to share too, because like you talked about the darkness and the demons and the just the intensity of energy that you were feeling that you had to work through. And I just want to share, like, if you're getting into these types of medicine, that's why they talk about the importance of setting and having a proper facilitator to say, hey, this is normal. This is what is supposed to happen. Because people hear about bad trips. I know I heard about bad trips growing up with like mushrooms and all this stuff. And it's, if you took that and you just were in a cabin by yourself, you'd be like, what the fuck has happened to me? Could be considered a bad trip, but that's what's supposed to happen because your body is resetting and your neurochemistry, and then there's some type of mystical experiencing happening as well. So I just wanted to share that with people that are new to this and starting to like research and get into it, because it's the importance of really having that facilitation and that integration and being around other people, being able to talk through it. There's just so much more that goes into that experience than just trying to reach nirvana or connect with God.
Yeah, so I should have prefaced all this with, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not recommending that anybody go do this. I'm just talking from my experience. But in this experience and the other one, it saved my life. In the 2 weeks following, all of my symptoms either lessened in intensity or all but started to fade away.
Wow.
I went home. I planted 750 cannabis for CBD plants from hemp. I'll send you a photo after this of the before and after 6 months. I did brain scans in my blood work before I left, because I always tested these new modalities every 6 months. I would switch it up. I'm very intentional with everything that I kind of do, because if something worked, I want to prove it. Anecdotal stories are cool, but if you can back it up with some science, it's even better. And yeah, man, so I did another large dose. So let me back up. I did the high doses on those 2 weekends, 6 days apart. And then I knew from my research, nothing gets fixed in 5 hours. So how could we create or sustain this sort of healing without obviously having to go and do that high a dose? Luckily, this PhD biochemist did microdoses in combination with CBD and functional mushrooms. So I did that, in a specific regimen, and then I retested my brain 6 months later after doing another high dose 3 months by myself that time, and I got it back. No abnormalities on my brain scans, and my blood work was completely clear, and I looked 20 years younger, and I was sleeping great. I was eating. I wanted to be present with my kids. I'm still amazed to this day about the transformation, but I'm also still working on it because I keep getting better. Right now, business wise, I'm in a very kind of stressful part of kind of what we're going through. And, but I've done as an athlete, right? You do everything you can to prepare for the opportunity. You can't change, you can't like influence the actual opportunity of if someone gets hurt, you get in the lineup, but you're doing everything to be ready for the opportunity. So that's what we've done with a couple different things. And now I'm just kind of waiting for that thing to come through. It's a lot of unknown, which can cause a lot of fear, but this medicine just helps you manage that, and helps you. When I leave this office, I don't bring it out there. I don't yell at my kids. I don't, because I'm stressed at work. I helps me manage all of that, which is nice. And I still practice with the medicine if I can't, figure something out. Why wouldn't I? Because like you, I saw the fMRI screens. I saw what it does from a neuro anti-inflammatory standpoint, and yeah, it was.
Yeah, man, just speaking to the relief that you must have felt from, being on this journey of trying to figure out what's wrong with you, knowing what's wrong with you, but trying to figure out ways to heal yourself and investing all this money, all this time, all these different modalities, going to all these different places, connecting with all these different experts, doctors, like trying to figure out how to heal your brain. And then you go do these mushrooms and you go to this farm and you feel like you've never felt for $30. And just talk about the relief you must have felt. Like, what was that experience like? Just being like, wow, was it just like a deep breath? Like, whew.
It brought a lot of relief, but like, there's no like finality to like the healing process, right? Like in my mind, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like, oh, I got this now, so I can stop. And I continue to test my brain, my blood. And then the only other thing is like, okay, there's an intricacy to this because what I took is illegal. It's a Schedule I substance, designated by the government to have no medicinal value, and be highly abusive, which couldn't be further from the truth for this one particular substance. It goes back to the war on drugs and Nixon and wanting to lock up brown and black communities, right? So I had to be careful with what I say, or I had to like at least reconcile with the fact that I have kids, and if I use my platform to talk about this, I could get in trouble. But if I don't talk about this and how it saved my life, more people are going to die. So I just started fucking talking about it, and I don't sell it. I'm not, breaking laws from that standpoint. It's like a personal use thing. And I started to get involved in decriminalized nature movements. We helped get with Melissa Lavasani, who's now at the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition, and helping to change federal scheduling of these substances and laws and funding. She introduced Initiative 81 to Washington, D.C., and she was instrumental in getting that passed. And I just offered my story and where I could be helpful. So I started to mess around in policy and then, created a company called Wesana, which took the method that I used, high doses and low doses of psilocybin. We went through the FDA process. We met with them in March, and that was amazing. And I thought, I believe in a lot of different ways to access this medicine. So like Decrim Nature is a model that decriminalizes prosecution of people that grow and gather and gift this medicine that is deemed a Schedule I. And then I wanted to make sure that concussion survivors could go to a doctor. There's no medication for concussion survivors that can be prescribed to us. They prescribe the antidepressants and these other things that exacerbate these other symptoms, right? That's the model. The big pharma model is prescribe something, it's going to cause 2 more symptoms, but don't worry, we got something for those 2 symptoms. And it's a cyclical cycle. It doesn't get to the root cause of why these symptoms are arising, which is why these psychedelic medicines are so amazing. And then, I also believe fully in the policy that's happening with Measure 109 and Prop 122 in Colorado, where these statewide therapeutic adult use programs are being set up in these states. And then you can take a full spectrum medicine, right, in a regulated manner. So it's not buying it, from the underground, if you don't want to, there's a lot of steps to growing mushrooms. So if you don't want to go and do that, then you can fly to Oregon. You're not called a patient, you're called a client, and you can go and access it. And it's not just for people that are sick. It's for people that want to explore their consciousness, which, why shouldn't they have access to this either, right? So I just started to play around in it all, and it's been now, 4.5 years, and it's been it's an amazing ride. I've met a lot of really amazing people. I've also met a lot of really bad people and people that have taken advantage of me, which a lot of people do, right? And we as former athletes tend to experience it more than often, most likely, but I played a role in it. And I'm grateful again for the suffering, for the lessons, for the sickness, for the concussions, for everything, because I believe that this information about ayahuasca, psilocybin, cacti, MDMA for PTSD that MAPS is working on in phase 3 trials with the FDA, it's going to help millions and millions and millions of people, and I have a platform because I played a freaking game. So what better way to use the platform than to talk about this stuff? And all I have to do is talk about it, So it's an amazing life.
Yeah, beautiful, man. And I'm really, I'm really grateful for you, man. And you spoke about having gratitude for the lessons, the challenges, the adversities, all the brain trauma, everything. And isn't that the secret sauce? Being able to find gratitude for all of the challenges on the journey, because it's always leading us deeper into deeper levels of ourself and deeper connections with, creation in this reality. And yeah, man, I'm really, really thankful for the journey you've been on, man. So how are you feeling now as far as 4.5 years ago, having this experience and the symptoms? I mean, do you experience any of that still, or do you still do just microdoses and management protocols?
Yeah. So now it's, like I said, I continue to feel better, right? I continue to practice with the medicine on a subperceptual level. And when I feel the need, it's definitely gotten more pronounced, right? More time in between the larger doses, but I can't figure something out. Or, one of the things that a lot of people talk about, in this industry, if you want to call it an industry, or in this world, it's well, you can only use it if you're sick, and there's two different ways to do it. It's high doses and low doses. Well, in fact, it's the best brainstorming tool that you could ever have if you want to be creative, if you want to. So there's a couple other indications that you can use it for that don't have to deal with depression and anxiety. And so it's, you got to talk about that. And yeah, no, just, really grateful for the life that I have, the healing that I've found, the people that I've met, good and bad, and then what the future holds. And the future's, really bright. I don't know about you, but when I was playing, man, I was oh, God, this is boring. Is this it? Is this what my life is going to be? Pushing a fucking puck around? This sucks. Towards the end anyway, and maybe it always sucked, because I was always, like I said in the beginning, I was always doing things that were harmful to myself. So, and now, I just don't think that way. I'm much, much happier. Love my kids. Love my life.
Man. Where do you think this greater kind of, this psychedelic renaissance that's taken shape, and the decriminalization of some of these medicines, and obviously they're becoming way more pronounced in our culture and society. They're just way more available, way more people talking about them. Yeah. How do you think this shifts our collective paradigm that we're moving through? You said there's a lot of scary shit happening in the world, a lot of unknown, a lot of shifts politically, socially, environmentally, financially. And then we got these medicine teachers, specifically the cacti, the mushrooms, ayahuasca, these really high level consciousness teachers coming online in a very beautiful way. And for those that have worked with these medicines, they're really profound in teaching us some deeper wisdom, not only about ourselves, but about consciousness, the planet. How do you see, the coming years playing out with this, shift in paradigm that's happening?
I don't know. It's a lot to think about. I do think that it makes people think more about their actions. It helps people be in the present moment. And it's a bit of an ego killer for sure, where if you once thought that, making money was all there is and getting one over on people, and it can help you realize like, no, man, that's part of it. You have to, of course, you got to live, you got to pay your bills, you got to support the lifestyle that you create, but you don't have to create this chaotic lifestyle and then go and run people over to try to support it. And like the time that I'm at soccer with my kids, or, I try to cherish that. And I'm not, I sit in this office and I work really hard, but, I also take my computer outside and like, I'm like active. And so do I think that like this movement, and more people are talking about it and more people are going to get healed and it's going to create a nicer, better world. It could create a smarter world. Damn right. So that's encouraging. But will it like deconstruct the war on drugs, and will it make nicer politicians, and will the large companies, the 7 or 8 companies that control our whole food source, are they going to suddenly do this and then everything's going to no, I don't believe that. I believe that we and individuals that don't like something need to talk less about what they don't like and create what they want, create the change in the world. That's when my life turned around, right? That medicine told me that I was creating my own hell and I was in control of either changing it or not, stopping to be negative and switching to a different perspective of being grateful. I only could have switched that perspective though if I started to feel better, which luckily I did. And I believe really strongly that, these things can help people feel better. And that's kind of where I kind of, stop. Now, have I seen where we go and on an ayahuasca journey and all that other good stuff? Absolutely. Do I talk about it a lot? Not right now, but the time will come for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest shift anybody can take is going from that victim consciousness into that creator consciousness. And for someone that was in such deep physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, and like there's every reason for you to be in that victim consciousness, and then being able to move through that, I think just gives a lot of people hope. So no matter where you're at, what you're moving through, there is hope to shift that energy and begin taking responsibility, even if you're in the shittiest of circumstances and you've getting beaten down by life, or you feel like I'm in a high inflammatory state, or I have these different things. Like, start going and taking responsibility and doing the things that you can do, and trying to find different ways to shift your perspective, your consciousness, and do these deeper healings. And these medicines are becoming more readily available. And I know with the company that you're creating, you're working on making these more available. We want to speak a little bit more to the things that you're working on, the things that you're bringing to the world, and the things that you're putting your energy into, and where people can find more information on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously policy I still support in the background, whether it's like the decrim movements or these bills that are being introduced to states. It creates an adult therapeutic use program, but it also decriminalizes a lot of these substances. So it kind of does a twofer. And then I've been working on, Wesana and getting a medication for traumatic brain injury related depression through the FDA system. And that program's, moving along. And yeah, I believe in education and awareness and helping people understand how to, grow their own medicine if that's something that they want to do. But also like, taking a dose of something also means working out, and it means getting good sleep, and it means eating well. And it, it's not like this is a cure-all. It's, maybe we made it, sometimes it can sound like that, but it's not. Like it's a tool to be used to just make your life better if you're willing to do a ceremony and then not just go pound McDonald's right away. And and listen, trust me, like the golden arches, I know that they're everywhere. And sometimes I fall victim, but I'm also human, where it's like, hey man, I am not perfect. This doesn't make you perfect. And so I think just, it made me really comfortable with who I am. And yeah, I'm just excited to whoever wants to hear the message or gets called to these medicines, because you don't just like all of a sudden wake up. You're not really like in pain or something's up and ask, well, or stumble upon this podcast or an article, or everything happens. Everything happens for a reason. It's a simple saying, but if you're getting called to it, I encourage you to just kind of do your research. There's a lot of really good companies out there educating, and then make your own educated decision.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Final question, just speaking back to elite athletes in particular, if any of them are listening to the show, they may be going through a transition, struggling with that identity crisis and shift. I know you have specifically dealt with some deeper brain trauma and symptoms that you've dealt with, but there's a wide majority of athletes that go through depression, loss of purpose, loss of identity, all these things that can be really challenging. Is there anything specifically that you can offer to athletes that may be moving through that? Any resources, any tools, or any direction to help support them in moving through this deeper journey of self-discovery, hopefully coming to a deeper connection with themselves and in who they are?
Yeah. One thing that like got told to me or that I learned was, like I am Daniel who played hockey. I'm not Daniel, the hockey player, So like that was one thing I did, but we get so caught up in it because we've done it from a young age and it's attached to who we are. And that's how everyone knows us. But you can definitely, dig in and figure out like what your other likes are and loves are. And then just take your time with, picking the next path. Right. And don't be scared to ask for help, because I ask so many dumb questions every day on these business Zoom calls and stuff, but it's how you learn, and yeah, I think just, being true to who you are, you'll always kind of find the way, like the path of least resistance. And, like listen, guys will listen to people like you, they'll listen to guys like us. Cause then the reality too is, not many people did what we did. And I know a lot of people want to be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like, usually athletes follow other athletes, right? So there's a large part of me that's kind of wanting to get back to what I was kind of doing before with Chapter 5 and the nonprofit, and just talking about and helping to support people as best we can, which I still do. I still take a lot of calls from alumni guys and former athletes, and but maybe I start getting into that in a more intentional way. But kind of that thing with Steve, right? When I met Steve, it was like, oh, what is that guy? What's up with him? How does he do that? Stay close to that person, and and then try to move forward and pick pieces that you like. You're not going to like everything. Leave the other ones behind, and move forward. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Daniel. I just want to honor you, man. So grateful for you taking the time. I know you're a busy man, building all these businesses and initiatives and really trying to share this message with the world. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and the work that you're doing to support not only athletes, but this deeper healing movement. So thanks, brother.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, man.